And how does it feel, I hear you say? You come back again and you die again. Come back and die again. You get the pattern. Hello, brothers. Today we are taking a look at Valor Mortis, a first-person Soulslike set during the Napoleonic era, where death apparently isn't enough to stop a soldier from getting back to his feet. You play as William, a soldier in Napoleon's Grand Army. You served Napoleon, you died for Napoleon, and you have risen for Napoleon. The demo gives us access to two different parts of the game. Chapter 1, which serves as the introduction and tutorial, giving us our first look at the horde, the combat, and the first boss. And Chapter 7, where you are dropped much later into the game with more weapons, abilities, and progression already unlocked. So, let's have a quick talk about Valor Mortis. The story starts after William is resurrected from a battlefield grave, but the Europe he wakes up to is no longer the same. A mysterious plague has spread across the continent, twisting people into horrific creatures and corrupting everything around them. At the same time, William discovers that this same corruption is flowing through his own veins. Throughout the demo, you occasionally hear a voice speaking to you, and it seems this voice is the great Napoleon Bonaparte himself. The game also introduced some interesting elements later in Chapter 7. There are some groups of children that seem to have adapted to this new world. They move through hidden tunnels and pathways almost like rats, staying unseen while surviving in the middle of this madness. The way they are presented makes it feel like they could play a much bigger role later on. Maybe allies, maybe enemies, maybe a choice. That's something that remains to be seen. The lore is still keeping most of its cards hidden, but it gives you enough to make you curious about what comes next. One, if not the most important part of a game, is the gameplay. And how does it feel, I hear you saying? Well, I'll tell you. At its core, Valor Mortis follows the Soulslike formula. You attack, you guard, you dodge, you parry, you die. You come back again and you die again. Come back and die again. You get the pattern. The combat revolves heavily around learning enemy attack patterns and timings. And honestly, this is where I had the most fun. The first boss was a really good example. I enjoy learning the rhythm of the fight, figuring out when to attack, when to stay defensive, and slowly improving with every attempt. When I finally defeat him, it felt earned, which is exactly what a boss fight should do. Another mechanic I really like is the weak spot system. Almost every enemy has a vulnerable area, and if you manage to hit it and break it, you can deal a surprising amount of damage. It rewards precision instead of simply swinging your weapon wildly. The game also offers plenty of movement options. Wall running, grappling, platform sections, and vertical exploration, which is not something you normally expect from a first-person Soulslike. And with all that said, we reached Chapter 7. This is where the game starts giving you more weapons, powers, and build options. And while I understand what the devs are trying to do here, this was actually the part I enjoyed less. Switching between multiple abilities, weapon powers during combat sometimes felt a bit confusing, at least for me. For example, during the first boss fight I had a pistol, a sword and a fire spell. During the fight I could dodge, parry and attack whenever I had an opening using either the sword or the fire spell. Then, whenever a weak spot appeared, I simply switched to my pistol and shoot it. Simple, clean and easy. In Chapter 7, However, I had all the previous equipment, plus a new sword, a new shield ability and a rifle. And all of that had to be switched either with the mouse wheel, which cycles through every weapon instead of selecting the one you actually want, or by pressing Q to open a quick select menu and choosing it from there. Now, having choices is not a bad thing, but I often felt like I couldn't do what I wanted at the exact moment I wanted to do it. Maybe it's something that becomes more natural after spending more time with the full game, or maybe you simply settle into your own playstyle and preferred loadout. But during the demo there were definitely moments where I was fighting the controls as much as I was fighting the enemies. Not bad, just a little overwhelming. Another thing I wasn't a big fan of was the second boss in Chapter 7. Using the shield ability made it feel like I could simply guard through most of his attacks without really worrying about the timing or trying to parry them. And on top of that, throwing a few grenades at him dealt a surprising large amount of damage. Because of that, the fight didn't feel challenging, and honestly, it didn't really feel like a boss fight. Compared to the first boss, which really pushed me to learn the attack patterns and timings, this one felt a bit less satisfying. One thing I absolutely liked though was the exploration. Chapter 7 is full of secrets, and I mean full of secrets. Breakable objects, hidden paths, items hidden above your head, small corners that look empty until you actually investigate them. The game constantly rewards curiosity, so if you decide to play it, look everywhere, and I mean everywhere, because there's a very good chance you'll miss something. Valor Mortis is running on Unreal Engine 5. I played the game on an RTX 4090 using epic settings, and I was averaging around 120 FPS. The game ran smoothly throughout my playthrough and I didn't encounter any bugs, freezes or crashes. As for the visuals, I think the overall art style works really well. The game combines battlefields, ruined villages, forests and plague-infested environments into a dark and gritty atmosphere. The lighting does a good job creating tension and blending naturally with the surroundings. The enemy designs are also pretty interesting, especially once the mutations start showing up, except for that one thing, that thing that is trying to look like a dog. Anyway, I wouldn't say the visuals are anything groundbreaking, but they're definitely solid, and more importantly, they have their own identity, and that for me is the most important part. The sound design does a solid job throughout the game. Weapons have impact. Enemy attacks are easy to recognize, which is especially important in a Soulslike where timing is everything. The ambient sounds also do a great job building the atmosphere, making the horde feel even more unsettling. The music knows when to stay in the background during exploration and when to step in during the more intense moments. It never felt overwhelming or distracting. Instead, it complemented the gameplay really well and helped build the mood of its area and boss fights. Overall, I really like what I heard. And with all that said, we've reached the point where I need to answer the most important question. How does it actually feel? Well, brother, if you're a Soulslike player, then Valor Mortis is definitely a game you should keep an eye on. I think we have something here. The first-person Soulslike formula works better than I expected. The combat feels satisfying. The first boss was genuinely enjoyable and really rewarded learning its patterns. The lore is interesting enough to keep me curious about what happens next, and if you're someone who likes exploring, well, the game rewards your curiosity with secrets. At the same time, I'm still not completely sold on some of the later game complexity. Maybe that's something that becomes more natural as you spend more time with the game. But for now, I can definitely say that Valor Mortis has my attention. The game is already available on Steam, offering around 1 to 2 hours of gameplay with 2 boss fights, and I think it's definitely worth a look. The full game will officially release on October 13. And now, the end is near. My friend, I'll say it clear. Regrets, I've had a few. But then again, I did what I had to do. I did it my way. Over and out.